The program will begin shortly. Launch sequence. Activate. Warning, the following content is not politically correct. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back, everybody. So yeah, today is Monday. So here we are on YouTube and Rumble, Transform to Freedom. I'm your host, Sara Higdon. We're going to talk a little bit about the news of the day. If you didn't see though, so I got the flu last week. So just bear with me a little bit, see how that's going. It's interesting because I didn't think the flu was a thing anymore. I mean, right? I thought COVID got rid of the flu, but it lasted about 2 days. And actually I don't know if I could say this on YouTube, but it was worse than the flu. Like very sore and achy and just a bad headache for a couple days. And yeah, but better now. And then I fly out to on a well-needed vacation to go visit my family tomorrow morning. So as soon as I get off the stream, I'm going to bed because my flight leaves very early. So, but welcome in. I hope everybody else is having a good week, or you had a good week, good weekend, and now it's Monday and you're ready to start. You're starting your week, and your week has started off right. But let's get into the news of the day, right? So the first thing I want to talk about is actually this Oregon. There is, let me just pull it up. So there's testimony on HB 2002, which, wow, this bill, it basically starts to make Oregon into a sanctuary state. And when we hear people talking about sanctuary states, we hear in two cases: the abortion case, where, the bill would say that the state of Oregon cannot go to another, if another state was trying to get access to see if you had committed a crime, if they didn't have abortion in, say, Idaho, and somebody goes to Oregon and has an abortion, Oregon does not have to comply with Idaho standards or have to apply, even give them any information, on what you did while you were in that state. In terms of the trans stuff, we have where a minor can basically go into any state and get care that they want. But this bill even goes further. It's about all reproductive health, right? So this bill is crazy. And the clip I have is just, it's about a lawmaker so they're basically testifying before the Ways and Means Committee on this bill. And when they, this is actually talking about the abortion part and how young you can actually get an abortion in the state of Oregon without parental consent or even knowledge. So here's that clip.
Under the current law, it's not entirely clear what age a minor can make the determination to have an abortion without parental consent. Under House Bill 2002A, however, it's a minor of any age can make that determination.
So follow up. So a 10-year-old can make that decision on their own then?
No.
Chair Sanchez, Senator Steiner, yes.
10-year, no. 10-year-old?
I didn't think so for that. I thought it was okay.
So you heard what she said. So the question asked was, a 10-year-old can consent to an abortion without parental consent or knowledge, and the lawyer says yes. And you can even hear like the Democrats in the room like, no, you can't say that. You can't say that in this hearing. It's blasphemy. You can't say that. That's not that. This bill will never pass now. Good job, lawyer. But that's exactly what this bill does. I mean, this bill says that a child of any age can get reproductive care without parental consent, and it's all reproductive care. It's all reproductive care. So you can go and you can get your birth control pills. You can get all, which is essentially hormones. You can get all of that stuff without parental knowledge. Now, one of the lawmakers makes a good point in later on in this hearing, because I actually so I actually wrote it up this weekend for the in the Post Millennial, and so I watched the entire testimony. And so it's really interesting because one of the lawmakers goes on to make a good point and say, well, if a child of that age is having an abortion, then a crime has been committed. And so, police need to be notified. Like if a child comes into Planned Parenthood and is having an abortion, Planned Parenthood has an obligation to call police to say a crime has been committed because that child has been raped. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That child has been the victim of rape. That is, unless, again, the child is the same age as the other child that they were, yeah. But in most cases, it should be a red flag to authorities to say, we need to look into this case. What happened here? Now, Senator Knoop, he raised one of the issues about a parent. So the 14th Amendment, the Supreme Court has ruled on this already. It says that they've said a parent's right to have information about their child and make healthcare decisions. Under the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, the court upheld a fundamental right for a parent to oversee care, custody, and control of a child. When asked that to the attorney, she basically stated that they also kind of said that right is not absolute, as long as they can, as long as the state has a legitimate public policy reasoning for interfering on that right, they can. Let's see. So Jen says you should point out the differences state to state regarding consent and abortion eligibility, or look at. Yeah, I can imagine. I know California has some really crazy laws. I know there's states across the country that after Roe v. Wade was overturned, started putting out these crazy laws that really allow anybody to consent, anybody to, some states were paying for other states to come to their state to, have an abortion there. I can imagine that each state is crazy, would depend on the difference of it. But there was one part in here that I wanted to highlight as well. So one of the questions raised about this too was this part where it says that in the state of Oregon, under the statute, it is a crime to conceal the birth of an infant, which his concern was that nobody would be held liable if a baby was born alive due to a failed abortion, and if that child was just left to die. Now, and that kind of came up because the lawyer had said that if the baby was born alive and the doctor still killed the baby, then that would be chargeable under that'd be murder. But if it was left to die, that's a separate issue. Sorry, I have dogs. But one of the last points is that, like I said, it makes Oregon the latest sanctuary state for not only abortion, but for what is it? Minors seeking medical procedures or drugs without the consent inside the state, which would also be for a gender affirming care, as they talked about in here. And actually, it was really interesting when at one point, one of the senators, which is the co-chair of the committee, said that she claimed, and this was interesting because she claimed that surgical procedures under the age of 18 is not considered standard care, which we know are happening quite a bit across the country in gender clinics when they're having these, life-altering elective surgeries for like top surgery and everything like that. That's happening quite a bit. But then she also noted like gender affirming care is a wide spectrum, and that a child as young as 8 may get gender affirming care that is simply supporting them for being who they are. Now, I don't think she has an idea of what she's talking about, but to admit that a child as young as 8 is allowed to get gender affirming care without the consent of their parents in the state is insane. That's basically what she was saying right there, because the whole conversation was without parental consent, that they would be able to get gender affirming care without the parents' consent. It's insane. And we know that, other states like Colorado and California have already made rules such as these. But let's see. Okay, let me see. Little Cat Feet says, completely on the fence here. I know that many of these teen pregnancies are complex. The complexity is that the family member is the father. I worked at a rape crisis center and it was common. Yeah, but if that's the case, like, if you go to a rape crisis, or if you go to Planned Parenthood and you try to get an abortion without your parental consent, if you go to a crisis center and you're trying to get an abortion without your parental consent, and that person that is your parent, then that's an automatic flag to authorities, like I was talking about earlier. I mean, there should always be a push to go to authorities, especially when it's a minor. There should be something, at least in this bill, that says if a minor is pregnant, then authorities need to be called. Let me see. All right. So I think that's all for that one. But it's crazy because that's kind of what we're seeing across the board in a lot of these states that are they're pushing these procedures. They're allowing children to have agency over their own bodies. What you're going to start seeing next is people start pushing for the ending of the age of consent, which is absolutely wrong and insane. And the fact that you're seeing them trying to be like, yeah, so a child has agency over their own bodies. No, like they're, that's not, it's not right. Children need to be children, let them grow. And even with, I mean, obviously you guys know when it comes to trans stuff, you have to let a child grow. I believe in, you shouldn't transition, shouldn't be allowed to transition until the age of 18, no matter what. We know parents are being manipulated and lied to. We know all of this stuff. And yes, Psycho, welcome in. Yeah. And you're right. There is no such thing as transgender kids. There shouldn't be any such thing as transgender kids. They're still trying to transition into a human that can care for themselves. Absolutely. You can't even care for yourself until you're 18. We talk about that. And except for if you get emancipated, which is a completely different topic. But the idea is that there should be no such thing as a trans kid, because what a trans kid essentially is a child who's been manipulated and not been properly taken care for by their family. And because to be trans, you transition. I don't go off this new age definition of transgender, which transgender is an umbrella term, which doesn't really mean what it's supposed to mean. So no, being a trans person means that you have gender dysphoria and you've taken the steps to transition to the opposite sex. I will always use the definition of a transsexual when I talk about what trans is. That's interesting. I didn't know. Little Cat Feet says the majority of abortions in Australia are actually done by married couples after getting disability scan. 90% of parents would choose abortion after getting scans confirming severe disability. Now, I don't agree with that. Actually, that's one of those things. I know that it can happen here. I think you can still do it here. I think it's allowed here, but because they do a lot for Down syndrome. But if you are going to kill your unborn child because it has Down syndrome or any other syndrome, that's a form of eugenics. That is trying to wipe out some disabilities via basically murder. And so I don't agree with just aborting a baby because it has severe Down syndrome or something like that. Now, if there's other issues that that it may come up with, I don't know any of the other stuff that people are aborting babies over. Now, I know that back in the day, one of the reasons why they did not they stopped pursuing to find the gay gene, to find out if there was a marker to tell whether your child was going to be gay before they were even born, was because the fear that would be used in the same way, that if you found out that your child was going to be gay before you had that child, the fear was that a lot of people would try to abort that baby, which again is another form of eugenics. I saw one that I wanted to go to. All right. Jen McMahon says, one example in the state of Georgia, if you get pregnant by saying the father and you want to get an abortion, you need to notify one of a parent before 24 hours before getting, if you're under 18. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's funny because I live in Georgia and I'm not actually sure of the laws. I just know we have the 6-week, we have a 6-week abortion ban. So basically anything after the age, after 6 weeks, you. So yeah, get out of here. Sorry. They're not supposed to be down here. I have to go put them back upstairs in a second. Robbie says, trying and failing to find a logical reason to transition kids. All I can come up with is evil intent. Now, I agree. Like when we're talking kids, absolutely. There's no reason to do it other than to push this evil Marxist narrative, like postmodern ideology onto them. There was a point where I would have supported with heavy gatekeeping the transition at 16, because at that point, I used to think that, you know, the detransition rate would drop off significantly after the age of 16, and especially for male to female, there would be a much higher likelihood that that person would pass. But I've changed my mind on that. You know, I think if we can get back to a place where the medical industry is actually, you know, doing their job and doing like the best screening for these people, and they're not just like pushing people through for money, then we could get back to that. But I don't see us getting back to that place ever. Like, I am doubtful we will ever get back to that place in any time that I ever see where I would feel comfortable with anybody under the age of 18, you know, transitioning. And I will never, ever, and this is one thing I've never supported, taking, having elective surgeries under the age of 18. In fact, when I was working on the bill here in Georgia for this, to ban surgeries and hormones, when I was pushing that bill, I was talking to legislators. I said one of the flaws that the bill had is that it was specific to gender dysphoria. I said the bill should actually apply to the young girl who wants to with body issues, who wants to get breast implants at the age of 16. Like that, they should not be getting any life-altering elective surgeries before the age of 18, period. And so I would love to see more bills pop up across the country to even outlaw those surgeries. But yeah. Let's see. Referring to the current culture promoting child transition. Yeah, I think I think you hit it. It is definitely something that's evil. Again, I mean, postmodernism is evil. It is an evil ideology that seeks to destroy our culture as a whole. Oh, here we go. Miss Andrea says, I think they are trying to transition kids as a form of population control, sterilize a chunk of generation under the guise of acceptance. Yes, I agree. I've actually talked about this. I've talked about this a little bit in speeches. I think in my last speech in Pennsylvania. You know, I think there's a little bit of eugenics to play when it comes to this ideology, right? So I think I think there is, because when you look at the high propensity for, you know, one of these kids to have other comorbidities, one of the large ones being autism, you can see that they may be trying to sterilize those kids so that they do not reproduce, and so that they can try to wipe out some of those issues. And I think that is absolutely evil, and it's wrong. And it's, yeah. Jen says, like, I feel like our generation read the Communist Manifesto correctly, and this generation is reading it completely upside down. I agree. I think everybody, and this is what's interesting, because I don't read a lot of books that are for people on my side. I read books for them. And I actually, when Ariel was here, I actually showed her my copy of the Communist Manifesto and my copy of Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals and Sun Tzu. but we were reading it in a way to show exactly how the people we don't want to be like were reading, and now they're reading it in a way to, like, this is the goal. And I think a lot of people don't understand. I think too many people on our side of the things don't understand or have not read the Communist Manifesto. I think a lot of people think that if you read the books of the other side, then you are, it's like somehow shameful because you're reading the stuff that they believe, which is actually the exact opposite. You should actually read that of your enemy. You should know how your enemy thinks. And Marxists are absolutely my enemy. But even what we're seeing now, though, and I was actually on a stream with my friend Pasta on Friday, where he when I brought up Marxism, he clarified, because, and he was right. He said, like, what we're talking about when we're talking about like trans stuff and this ideology is not Marx. In fact, it's cultural Marxism or neo-Marxism, which is not what Marx actually preached, which is true. So you're right. I think there is it's like Marxism evolved into something even worse. But actually, Marxism as a whole, communism as a just regular communism, is purely an economic and governmental system. Whereas cultural Marxism plays into these, the postmodern aspects of society in order to push and force this system that everybody works for the greater good into play. So it's a little bit different. It's worth, checking out and making the comparisons to, it's worth mentioning the differences, because if you don't, then the people that are actually preaching this stuff, they, like, the actual Marxists, you lose some credibility if you don't know the differences. So, all right, on to the next story, though. So the next story that we have, I guess I canceled this out. So this last weekend in Chicago, starting on Thursday, was absolutely insane. I don't know if you guys saw this. So this was the Raw Alerts scene. Hundreds of teens went out into the street of Chicago, just causing chaos, getting in fights, jumping on cars, really. And basically rioting for absolutely no reason. Like there was no reason for it. It didn't make any sense. There was no like higher purpose to this. It was just to cause chaos. So here's the video, and this is a little bit longer. So, and actually, you can actually hear at the end of this video the moments where gunshots rang out. There was gunshots.
Don't run. Come over here. They chasing me up in there. Now we got a person shot.
Just craziness, like there, and this is just one of many videos that came out. So apparently this was the second or the third night. So Saturday night was the third night in Chicago that this continued to happen. as you see, again, my show prep is basically my articles from the post millennial, which is I've been working a lot. So yeah. But yeah, so for 3 nights straight, and two teens were shot in Saturday night's events. The one was a 16-year-old who was shot in the arm, and the other was a 17-year-old who was shot in the leg. Both were transported to the hospital. I had not heard that either one of them passed away. They were both ended up being okay. Apparently, I'm pretty sure on Friday there was a 14-year-old that was shot. It was either Thursday or Friday, because again, this was the third night of all this going on, and it was just going. I mean, they're just going crazy. Which then, by absolute insanity, I don't have this one pulled up. Today, the new mayor of Chicago, so Lori Lightfoot lost her election to a further left candidate than her, so that's going to be a great for that city. He said this morning that, what is it? You can't. He said, the violence is not justified, but we need to, we shouldn't condemn these kids that are out there and causing this destruction. We need to give them somewhere to go, basically, is what they said. It's like basically saying the system failed them, and so they're acting out. But no, let me see. Yeah. Entertainment says, if they are minors, where's the parents? That's a good question. So if on Saturday night, 15 people were arrested, 9 of them were adults, and 6 of them were under the age of 18. So these are mostly, high school kids. And so it's April. I can only imagine how this rest of the summer is going to go. This is going to be crazy if this type of stuff continues to happen. And this is down in Millennium Park, which, if you know Chicago, that is like one of the most populated tourist areas in the city. Like, that's North Michigan Avenue, which is known as the Miracle Mile, which has like all the best shopping and everything like that if you're in Chicago. And so they are basically taking to downtown Chicago and making it their playground. It's crazy. Let me see, what else did it have? Yeah, so that was one of the other things. And so I think that response came to from the mayor after the Representative Lopez, Alderman Lopez from the 15th Ward, said, "This was Chicago last night. Save the excuses and rationalization. Unless you want this to be the norm in Chicago, hold them and their parents accountable," which I agree with. You have to hold these parents accountable. Otherwise, this stuff is going to continue to happen. Like, how do 300, now the reports were about 300, but other reports I had seen also said it could have been upwards to 1,000 kids. I guess they use social media to basically invite everybody. So all these people were like all in like the same social media chat, or the invitations went across social media. I guess Friday night they were down at the water district and they were causing trouble. Police came and everybody scattered and left. So there weren't very many I didn't see any videos from Friday night, but then Saturday night it was like all hell broke loose in downtown Chicago. And honestly, I haven't been to Chicago in, God, that was probably 2009. I think the last time I went to Chicago was in 2009, like right after I graduated college. And it was nothing like that. So, Let me see. Tom says, well, yeah, every time they say we just need a community center, no amount of community centers is going to fix this problem. No, it's parents need to be, again, I think that what the alderman had actually said is correct, that parents need to be held accountable for what their kids are doing. Like, that is the only way that this is going to be fixed. Because otherwise it seems like, and this is one of the problems we have across the country, doesn't matter what community it is, and it's one of the reasons why we're seeing so many issues, even with like with a lot of the issues, is that parents are expecting now the state to raise their kids. A lot of parents don't want to raise their kids. A lot of parents have kids and then they don't want to raise them, and so they send them to schools. I mean, that's what we talk about when we talk about like comprehensive sex. When we talk about sex education, when we talk about comprehensive sex education, we talk about, parents don't want to teach their kids that stuff, so they want the school to do it. And so now they're teaching it in kindergarten. Like, it doesn't make sense. Psycho says, defund public schooling. I agree. It has been a failure and it produces these kind of results. Which I push for school choice or voucher systems across the country, because I think that if you can get kids into here, but the problem is even if you have school choice, a lot of parents aren't going to even worry about it. They're just going to send their kids to the same schools and not worry so much about what their kids are learning in schools and everything like that. A lot of parents didn't even know what their kids were learning in schools until COVID opened their eyes to see what was actually happening, because they were actually at home, watching, they were at home and they could actually see and hear what their teachers were teaching them. Let me see. Yeah, I get that. I mean, yeah, I am the same way. As taxation is theft in and of itself, but yeah, you're paying for the community schools, and I mean the idea of public education. It's basically a form of socialism in and of itself. So you're absolutely right. I agree. All right, so next on the docket, going in a completely different direction here. We are talking. Let's talk. It didn't pop up. Sorry. Why is my stream? Okay. Oh, there we go. All right. Classified documents leaker. Has anybody else been kind of following this around? I wrote an article a couple weeks ago, like right as stuff was starting to come out about this, that when it came to Ukraine, like how much the troop levels, and it was really interesting because at the time it was just, it was talking actually about what the documents were. So like the documents showed troop and supply levels for the Ukraine and the Russian army. Oh, hi, babies. Ukraine and Russian armies, except for in those documents, they were doctored. And so it was interesting because both sides thought that the other side released it. And it was like some sort of psyops to get them to either like feel like their troops to be more like have less morale, or think that they were, everything that they were going through was a psyop, or something was going on. And so each side blamed each other for this leak. It was funny. So with that, and then, so as you may have known, so the other day. What was it, Friday? Let me see. I think it was Friday. So they arrested airmen. So from the Jack Texiera from the Air National Guard, who basically was for being the leaker of these classified documents. They said, so basically what happened is he posted these documents on this Discord server. And it was like a Discord server, like a private Discord server that he was running that had like 20 to 30 members. Most of everybody in this Discord server were like, again, they were all minors, they were kids. They didn't really, they really weren't up on things. And he was posting stuff in there just to like impress these kids, like so that they were in the know, as they said. Like one of the kids told the Washington Post that he was like his best friend. And so when he wasn't like, this kid wasn't going to turn him in, he knew his name, he knew all the stuff and wasn't going to turn him in. And it was really interesting. Now, there's been some conversation about him because, again, he was just trying to be a big man and show his friends he knew stuff, and what was going on and keep them in the know. But the issue, and so it wasn't like, anybody like Edward Snowden or even Chelsea Manning, who was trying to get this information out to the public so that they knew what was going on. It was posted in this private Discord server where they said that they kind of knew that they weren't supposed to show this to anybody else. They weren't supposed to release this information anywhere else. And so, but then obviously like some of these documents started popping up on other social media sites. And so that's when everybody started, figuring it out. But one of the interesting things is they said that he had this ability to predict or know stuff before it even became like national news. One of the claims was that the shooting in the Buffalo supermarket shooting was like the government knew about him and knew it was going to happen before it happened, but they let it happen. Like the FBI let it happen so that they could get funding. Like that's one of the conspiracies that came out from that, like that from the documentation. As well, we know from the documents in a report that we know that the U.S. may have more, allegedly has. I'm just gonna say allegedly, so I don't get kicked off YouTube. Because Marjorie Taylor Greene went to Congress last week to say, because one of the documents shows that we may have people on ground in Ukraine, which we said that we don't. Apparently, the documents showed that we have special forces soldiers, and we need to know how many of those soldiers we actually have on ground and what we're doing. So we may be more involved in the Ukraine war than we actually thought about it. As well, we know a report came out today. One of the things I saw today, one of the documents actually showed that our JDAMs are GPS guided JDAMs are missing targets because we provided the JDAMs. So the JDAMs we provide are missing the target because Russia has like GPS jamming capabilities, and so it's messing up the GPS system. So that's why they're not hitting. So they're actually hitting they're hitting far less targets than they should be. As well, some of the JDAMs were not functioning properly, so when they hit the ground, they never exploded, which it seems like, we've been told over and over again that, Ukraine's winning this war and Russia is losing so much. But after these documents, it shows that the government's just been lying to us over all of this stuff. So it's really interesting. And then there was actually this really interesting report. So I didn't know this. So the New York Times, one of their freelance writers, was actually able to, like, they talked to Texiera's stepfather, who was retired from the military. They talked to his stepfather like hours before he was arrested. And so the New York Times actually made contact before the FBI did, which is kind of interesting because and so they had a report this weekend, which was kind of cool. Like I said, their freelancer, Eric Toller, like, walked through the steps that he used. Like, internet sleuths can be amazing sometimes. Like, he got tipped off that there was more information on this Discord server. He followed it into, it was for the game Minecraft, followed it into that area where he found more than 100 other images. He followed the user that had posted it there and found out that he was part of this other Discord server called Thug Shaker Central, which is the exclusive Discord where that all happened, where Texiera posted under the name OG, and that's where they pulled out and they were looking at some of the games these other people were playing in what other usernames. So it was able to go in, and it's kind of like going into a URL and finding out other usernames that person had used. And one of the usernames came back as J Texiera. And then they followed that down its rabbit hole and they found out, they went to it, and it was the countertops. So they looked, don't piss off Kiwi Farms or 4chan. I don't even want to go over there and look what their stuff is, but it was like they looked at the white granite countertops that one of the documentation was sitting on, and it matched up with the white granite countertops that was in one of Texiera's Instagram pictures, and that was the link. Like, that they knew they had him at that point. And then again, they got there like a couple hours before the FBI had actually arrested him. Now the FBI said that they had been surveilling him for a couple days before they arrested him. But it's interesting that they didn't stop these journalists from going up to the door when they did. But apparently the authorities wanted to arrest him when he went into work, and then he missed work that day. And so they knew that he knew that they were concerned. And so they went and they arrested him then. Yeah, internet autists are scary, I can imagine. Which is kind of what, the whole Kiwi Farms 4chan, Kiwi Farms is kind of scary, to be honest, because they've literally gotten doxed people to the point where they committed suicide, which is insane. And if I'm not mistaken, Keffels had the site taken down, but I think the site's back up, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. And then if you ever want to find someone that distrusts the government, go find a veteran. Yeah. I am a veteran myself. I don't trust the government very much at all. In fact, I'm a minarchist, so I believe that, the only thing that the government should do is have a standing military to defend against is to have a standing military to defend against invasion, and that's it. But okay, so that is that. Now on to our last, and probably I need to name this last segment something. Let me see one sec. I forgot keffels existed. So what's interesting about keffels, I was on one of those Mario Norwal spaces it was a month or so ago now, and he said some Keffels said some vulgar stuff to Billboard Chris. But then after that, she got like canceled because then she started saying stuff that actually made sense, but was more like on the right leaning side of things. But was more like on the right leaning side of things, like stuff that we say, like that was like actually based in reality. And so she started to get canceled. But she was also targeted very heavily on Kiwi farms, which is also interesting because when she started saying stuff that was a little bit more, based in reality, she unblocked everybody. And now I had been blocked by keffels for like 2 or 3 years, and I'm unblocked at this point. I mean, I don't follow keffels, but it's interesting because she's actually seems to be more open to conversations after being very vulgar to Billboard Chris, which it was completely uncalled for. She actually got removed from the space for that, but that's her personality. I don't think she's a good person, but if she's turned towards being, not wanting to sterilize kids, maybe she can bring some more left-leaning people to our side when it comes to that. So we'll see. So the last one, I need a name for this segment because I think these last segments that I'm able to do on YouTube, because sometimes I haven't had much, and honestly, we'll see what happens in that last segment. But I should have just taken that one to Rumble. But so if y'all on YouTube don't subscribe to me on Rumble, go follow me over there too. Like that, yeah, because that's where I will be posting if I get canceled from here. And I will also be if there's stuff I can't show on YouTube, I'll just end the YouTube stream and just stream it on Rumble. I've done that. I did that in my first episode. But the last segment that I've kind of been doing is these kind of funny, outrageous tweets or comments from people. And so if any of you have like a name for this segment, like if you go back into the last couple episodes, you'll see like, I think it's been on almost every episode. The last segment has been something just completely off the wall that's completely ridiculous, and we need to make fun of people. Like people to judge in this case, right? So let's just play this video.
A crisis when it comes to roadway fatalities in America. We lose about 40,000 people every year. It's a level that's comparable to gun violence. And we see a lot of racial disparities. Black and brown Americans, tribal citizens, and rural residents much more likely to lose their lives, whether it's in a car or as a pedestrian being hit by a car. There are a lot of reasons related to discrimination, related to even the ways that roads are designed and built. Who has access to a safe street design that's got crosswalks and good lighting? Who doesn't have that access? That can drive disparities. And we have a responsibility to act on that. We've got a crisis.
Y'all. So first off, is he saying that minorities are worse drivers? Because that's what it sounds like he's saying. Because why would there be more disparities? Like this is part of the claim I don't get. Why would there be more disparities among minorities if you're not, essentially being, making a making a stereotype that and being racist about it. Like that just doesn't make sense. Like, I can see, no, that would get me in trouble. No, I can see if you were talking about women. I mean, that's stereotypical idea that women are bad drivers. That is what I could see him talking about in this situation. But, you know, I don't understand the part about minorities. Now, the part that infuriates me, probably worse than anything about this segment, is where he says that we have over 40,000 casualties a year, and it ranks up there with gun violence. It only ranks up there with gun violence if you're adding in the amount of people that die via suicide using a gun, which the left loves to do. They love to say 40,000 people were killed by guns last year. And then they point out, like, I forget what the stat, I think it's like 60% of those are suicide. And so those deaths would probably still happen if they didn't have a gun. So call the segment The Daily Stupid. Yeah, that might be a good one. Robbie, I can't remember because you're in the chat, I believe. Are you the one that helped me name the show? Just for full transparency, y'all, I didn't name the show Transform to Freedom. I was looking for a name and I actually asked for it. A friend of mine came up and said, "Why don't you do Transform to Freedom?" I said, "That's a great idea. It's a double entendre, transform to freedom. It's great. I'm a freedom-loving transsexual, so that works." Would you say? Roswell says Buttigieg probably thinks most white people actually have driver's license, and that's a good. I don't. Is he just looking at raw statistics? I don't know. Actually, I responded to this, and actually, if you haven't seen my episode of Timcast, let me see if I can pull where I responded to him. There it is. All right. I just quote tweeted and said, yeah, I quote tweeted and said, "There is just too much dumb in this clip to even respond." So I'll just remind everybody what I said about Buttigieg on Timcast. So here's what I actually said.
I've got a feeling I wouldn't be surprised if the official reports are not true. Like, where's Joe Biden right now?
Well, they don't want to admit that, a small town mayor that was only hired for one single reason, isn't doing a good job.
Oh,
the Secretary of Transportation.
The Buttigieg.
Yeah.
So, and then I've got a.
So yes, the small town mayor who was only hired because he was gay, he had to get that diversity hire in, is not doing a good job. And that was in reference to the rails. Now, Buttigieg has told us before how roads are racist. And I think he was alluding to that in that interview as well, where you can look at the face of Al Sharpton, and I think that's Al Sharpton, and say, where it's just, what are you talking about, dude? Like, because he's talked about how roads are racist in the past and I think he's alluding to, like, the exits, like they don't have the exits in the black neighborhoods or something like that. I don't get it, but it's not an accurate statement. Like, our road system, how are they racist? Like, it doesn't make any sense. But that's the type of person that Buttigieg is. And then we see all the stuff happening. His whole, how he still has a job befuddles me. Okay. It makes absolutely no sense to me, because first, our logistics systems break down and we have skyrocketing inflation because, we can't even get milk across the country because our drivers are stuck at the port. So all of our imports, we can't even get into the port. Like in California, I remember I had that, had a video last year, which was, had a video last year where he had like there was backups in the port, and so sorry, so there was backups in the port, and they couldn't get product and all that stuff into the US. Then we had the train derailments, and now we're talking about racist roads. So Buttigieg just hasn't done a very good job. But what do you expect from a small town mayor who's never done anything when it comes to transportation? And he gets hired as the Secretary of Transportation, a job that nobody really thought that you actually had to have qualifications to do. So yeah. But that is all I have for today. Let me see. Robbie says, studies have shown that we will soon run out of things to call racist. Yeah, and then those studies will be called racist. So, Mafia Guido says, I work in sales and have to deal with logistics all the time. That entire industry is beyond effed. Interesting. I don't know. I don't know if the whole industry is. Actually, I don't know if y'all know this. I double majored in logistics management and marketing, and 10 years, my first 10 years in the workforce was working in logistics. So I know the industry very well, though 7.5 years of those, I was actually a logistics officer in the Army, which is a little bit different than actually moving supply here in the US, but I've had to deal with all those agencies like on the ground and stuff like that. And then I have like my hazmat certification from my last job and where I was a warehouse manager. But yeah, now I've moved into doing marketing and writing and independent contracting and in this space. So I gain all of my money from y'all's support and doing whatever else I can. Trying to contract and do marketing stuff for everybody else, which is why I'm appreciative of all of your viewerships and all of your support. It means a lot, helps me along. It helps me continue my activism full time. So I appreciate all that. But with that, I am going to log off. It's been a very long day. It's been a very long week. And I have to go get ready and really go to sleep because I leave for Michigan early tomorrow morning. And I am heading out to visit families. So I appreciate y'all joining in. Make sure you go support my sponsors. Click that like and subscribe button below. Follow me across all social media platforms, and I will see you next time.